All right, what is up? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to make an Express REST API, and then we're going to write a React app that consumes it. So we're going to do it really simple. We're just going to make a to-do app. So our API is going to be really simple. It's just going to be users and to-dos. So the first thing to do is just set up the project structure. What are we going to call it? Call it to-do app. All right. We'll split this into two folders. We'll have API. Then we'll run create React app. I guess we'll just call it app. Or what should we call it? React. We'll call it React. And that's going to take a minute. All right, so it looks like you can't call it React because that's, I guess it's reserved. Okay, so we will call it I don't know, client. And this is going to take a long time. All right, so the React app just finished installing, and we're just going to leave that for now. We're going to do the API first. So we'll cd into the API directory, and we'll just start doing some scaffolding. The first thing we'll do is npm init. Great, and then we'll make a directory called source. We will make source.index.js, and yeah, then we'll just go ahead and open up VS Code. It's just going to take a second. All right, we've got everything opened up here. So we're going to be using Express for the API, which means we should open up the integrated terminal. Let's do npm I Express. And I think there's a lot of confusion about when you should use save dev, and the ideal use of save dev is when you're installing npm packages as like a development tool. So if you're using like a linter or I don't know, if you're using a linter, something like that, something that's not necessary at runtime, but everything else should just be regular saved, and that's what happens automatically when you run npm install. So you'll notice Express got put in the regular dependencies, which is where it should be, because our app runs on Express. It needs that for runtime. So we have Express. We're going to be doing test-driven for the API, because we're not using TypeScript. So we're going to do npm install Jest as well. While that's installing, we'll just edit our scripts really quick. We'll set this to Jest. Just watch. I like watch best. And then start is going to be node dot. Don't forget the comma. And we'll go ahead and create our test directory. Still installing. Let's do some more scaffolding. So inside our source directory, I think for the back end, we'll just use maybe Postgres. Let's use Postgres. So we're going to have a models folder. We're going to have a, not inside the models, we're going to have a routes folder. This finished installing, great. Okay, then we'll do npx just init, and this is so that we can, there's a malformed JSON. Oh, I forgot to save this. Okay. Would you like to use Jest when running test? Yes. Let's close this. We are using Node. Do you want Jest to add coverage reports? Sure. Automatically clear mock calls and instances? Sure. But really what we want to edit here is we want to look for what is it? Root. Okay, so roots. In here, we'll just put test. So it'll only look in our test folder for test files. It won't look in our node modules. And that's when you get the error. When you try to test, it'll say too many files to watch. All right, that is done. So I guess the first thing to do is to just start writing some routes. So it's to do app. We're gonna start without authentication and then add authentication. So all the to-dos are just going to be public, essentially. There's going to be one to-do list to start with, no user association. So we'll create to-do.js. I'm sorry, that should be to-dos. All right, and then in our index, we'll just start creating our Express app. So we'll say const app equals express. I'm sorry, and before that, const express equals require express. Computer's being really slow. Get a blank line there. Okay, app equals express. We'll say const port equals, our React app's going to run on 3030, at least the dev server is. So or it's going to run on 3000, I mean. So we'll put this one on 3030. And then we'll just do app.listen. App.listen port. And we'll give it a little callback. Just say console.log. Listening on port. Very straightforward. Okay, and then we're going to assume that our to-dos is going to export a router. So require /routes /to-dos. Perfect. Use /to-dos. Perfect. All right. So I think this is going to fail just because to-dos doesn't export anything. So we'll do npm run start. Yeah, that's going to fail. Oh, also because we didn't set our entry correctly. It's in src. We'll save that and try again. I think it's still going to error, but for a different reason. Okay. Yep, okay, so router.use requires a router or a middleware function. So let's just create a router really quick. Const router equals express dot router export default. I'm sorry, no, this is node, so we have to do module.exports equals router. There we go. Okay, perfect. So, yep. Then we're just going to go ahead and create our middleware folder, because this is what we're going to be testing, really. It's our middleware. this should actually run now. Yep, listening on port 3030. But if we go to port 3030, yeah, it's going to say cannot get. So our server is definitely running, but there is nothing being served. So let's install Sequelize. And then I'm using XFCE here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch a workspace over and open up Chrome here. And then I'll close this one. All right. Then we will look at the Sequelize documentation. All right, so we're using Postgres, which means that we have to install PG and pghstore. So let's do that. That is correct, right? pghstore, perfect. All right, looks good. Then let's create, inside our src, let's create a Sequelize.js. This is just going to initialize our connection. So we'll say const Sequelize equals require Sequelize. Okay, const Sequelize equals new Sequelize. And actually we're going to call this DB. And we're just going to put in our Postgres. Yeah, and for now we're just going to use this dummy data. And what are we going to call this? We're going to call this REST API. And that actually means that the user is going to be REST API too. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to be running Postgres in a container. So that should be fine. Just going to run the Docker image of Postgres. You can look up how to install and run Postgres yourself, but this is just easier than installing it on this computer. And we're just going to make the password 1234 for the purposes of this tutorial. Really, you would want to put that in an environment variable, but this will work just fine. All right. Oh, another thing we can go ahead and do is install, and this is going to be a save dev, because this doesn't have anything to do with runtime. It's going to be standard. This is our style guide linter. I have the standard VS Code plugin installed and enabled. As soon as it loads, it'll show. There it is, standard JS. So yeah, that's a good one generally. Let's keep looking at our example here. All right, so that looks like it. All right, we can just start setting up our models. So let's go in our models, and we'll create a to-do.js. All right, and we're going to import Sequelize. All right, and I'm sorry, no, we need to just import our database, and we actually need to export our database from here. All right, great. So const db equals require /Sequelize. All right, db dot const to do equals db dot define to do. It's going to be our table name. And this is going to have a title. Type is going to be, okay, we do want to import data types from Sequelize. All right. Dot string allow null false. Perfect. And let's just copy this. And this is going to be the to-dos have a title and they have a description. All right, so that's all we're going to do with our to-dos. We're not going to make them have any dates associated with them or anything. What's this complaining about? That's weird. Why is that unexpected? Okay. And then we're just going to export our to-do. Perfect. Let's close everything. And how do we interface with this? Okay, model querying. Okay, oh, we also need to sync it. Perfect. I'm pretty sure that sync returns a promise. Yeah, okay, so we need to, that's asynchronous. It's really, really funny. Why would they call it sync if it's asynchronous? So for testing purposes, I think that we should Okay, so for testing purposes, we'll just do it there in the test. Never mind. Okay, because sometimes with testing, if you want your database to exist right away, we're not even going to be testing with the real database because we're using Postgres instead of. If you were using SQLite, then you could create like a test database every single time you test, and then create the tables within that, and then you need to do that synchronously before you run your tests. But we don't have to deal with that, so never mind. Standard installed, perfect. We have our linting. All right, so I guess it's time to start writing our tests. Inside tests, create a folder called middleware, and actually inside middleware we need to-dos, and then inside to-dos we'll create a find middleware. All right. The same thing here, folder called to-dos, and then find.test.js. And then here, we'll just go ahead and define like a blank middleware function. It's like const find equals next, and it does nothing. And we'll just export that. All right. So we're just going to keep on going, creating our middleware, and then we're going to actually do it test driven. So we're going to define what it should do in the test and then write it. So that will be next up.